The obsidian throne room fell silent as Captain Marcus Chen stepped forward, his boots echoing against polished stone. Queen Vexthara sat motionless, her crystalline form radiating lethal cold that could freeze blood in seconds. Behind her towering figure, 12 Zeridian nobles watched with predatory eyes, their scaled hands resting on ceremonial blades. "The human ambassador approaches without proper shielding," hissed Lord Kethmore, his voice carrying the weight of ancient law. "Protocol demands he maintain distance. One touch from our queen means death." Marcus felt the temperature drop with each step. Ice crystals formed on his breath, and his exposed skin began to sting. The thermal suit provided minimal protection, enough to survive brief exposure, but prolonged contact with Queen Vexthara would prove fatal to any species except her own. "I understand the risks," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the growing cold, "but my message cannot wait for proper equipment." Queen Vexthara's luminescent blue eyes fixed on him. She had ruled the Zeridian Empire for 3 centuries, her touch capable of flash-freezing any living creature. Even her own people required protective gear in her presence. Yet something in the human's determined approach intrigued her. "Speak from where you stand," she commanded, her melodic voice carrying undertones that made the air itself vibrate with cold. "Distance keeps you alive." Marcus shook his head, ice forming on his uniform collar. "Your Majesty, what I carry requires absolute discretion. The hegemony has intercepted our transmissions. They know about the mining rights treaty, but they don't know about this." He reached into his jacket, producing a crystalline data core that pulsed with inner light. Gasps echoed through the throne room as the nobles recognized the artifact, a progenitor memory crystal. "Thought extinct for millennia. Impossible," breathed Lord Kethmore. "Those artifacts were destroyed in the Purge Wars." Queen Vexthara leaned forward, her interest overriding protocol. "Where did you acquire this?" "From a human archaeological team on the Rim Worlds," Marcus replied, taking another step closer. The cold now penetrated his bones, but he pressed forward. "We found a hidden vault. This crystal contains star charts, coordinates to 17 uninhabited worlds rich in trilithium deposits. The economic implications struck the room like lightning. Trilithium powered their fastest ships and most advanced weapons. Control of those deposits would shift the balance of power across 3 star systems. "Hand it to my chancellor," Queen Vexthara ordered. "He will verify its authenticity." "I cannot," Marcus said, his words forming visible clouds in the frigid air. "The crystal is biotechnically sealed. It only responds to the genetic signature of whoever activated it first." "That was me. If anyone else touches it before I transfer the data properly, it will self-destruct." Lord Kethmore's hand moved to his blade. "Convenient excuse, human. Perhaps this is an assassination attempt." Marcus smiled, despite his numbing lips. "If I wanted to kill your queen, I wouldn't have come alone or announced my presence to your entire court." Queen Vexthara studied him with ancient wisdom. She had survived assassination attempts, coups, and 3 interstellar wars by reading the truth in beings' actions rather than their words. This human's body language spoke of determination and desperation, not deception. "The transfer process requires physical contact with me," she said, her voice carrying a note of curiosity rather than command. "Yes, Your Majesty. The crystal interfaces directly with your bioelectric field, but the process takes several minutes. Any interruption will corrupt the data permanently." The throne room erupted in urgent whispers among the nobles. Physical contact with their queen meant certain death for any outsider. Her unique physiology made her skin and breath lethal to other species, an evolutionary adaptation that had made the Zeridian royal bloodline both revered and feared. "No human has ever touched me and lived," Queen Vexthara said softly. "Your species lacks our natural resistance to extreme cold." Marcus felt his strength ebbing as hypothermia set in, but his resolve remained unshaken. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, but 17 worlds of trilithium could fund your empire's expansion for centuries." "That's worth the risk." He took another step, now only 10 feet from the throne. Ice formed on the stone beneath his boots, and his breath came in sharp, painful gasps. Queen Vexthara rose from her throne, her movements fluid and graceful despite her imposing height. The temperature in the room plummeted further, and several nobles backed away involuntarily. "You would die for information that benefits my empire more than your own?" she asked, genuine puzzlement coloring her tone. Marcus nodded, fighting to maintain consciousness as the cold penetrated deeper. "Because our species' survival depends on forming strong alliances. Earth needs friends among the major powers. If sharing this discovery proves our value as partners, then the risk is justified." Queen Vexthara extended one elegant, deadly hand toward him. Ice crystals danced around her fingers like living jewels. "Then approach, brave human. But know that no one has ever defied my nature and survived the touching." Marcus stepped forward, his entire body screaming protests as the lethal cold prepared to claim him in the name of diplomacy and species survival. The crystalline data core pulsed brighter in his trembling hand as Queen Vexthara's deadly touch drew near. Marcus felt his vital signs failing as hypothermia set in, but he forced himself to focus on the task ahead. The biotechnical transfer required precise hand-to-hand contact for at least 3 minutes, longer than any non-Zeridian had ever survived touching their queen. "The process will be painful for you," Queen Vexthara warned, her luminescent eyes showing unexpected concern. "My touch drops surface temperature to -40 degrees Celsius within seconds." Marcus nodded, unable to speak as his jaw muscles seized from cold. He pressed the data core against his palm, feeling its warmth, the last heat he might ever experience. Lord Kethmore stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this violates every safety protocol. If the human dies during transfer, we lose the information permanently. And if we don't transfer it now," Marcus managed to gasp out, "the hegemony fleet arrives in 6 hours to claim those worlds by force. They're already mobilizing in the Outer Rim." Queen Vexthara's expression hardened. The hegemony had been expanding aggressively, absorbing smaller species, and claiming resource-rich systems through military intimidation. 17 trilithium worlds would give them unstoppable firepower. 6 hours, she repeated, calculating rapidly. "Not enough time to develop proper protective equipment, which is why I came without it," Marcus said, extending his free hand toward her. "Sometimes diplomacy requires personal sacrifice." The queen studied his face, seeing determination where she expected fear. In 3 centuries of rule, no being had ever voluntarily approached her knowing the consequences. Most species considered her a beautiful monster, deadly to touch, impossible to embrace. "You understand you will likely die?" she asked quietly. "I understand the probability," Marcus replied. "But humans have a saying, sometimes the mission matters more than the messenger." Queen Vexthara reached out slowly, her fingers hovering inches from his outstretched hand. The air between them crackled with supercooled energy, and Marcus felt his skin beginning to freeze simply from proximity. "In my culture," she said, "physical contact is sacred. We touch only family members and only with protective barriers. You ask me to break traditions older than your civilization? I ask you to help me save both our peoples from hegemony dominance," Marcus corrected, his voice weakening, but words remaining clear. The queen's fingers touched his, and Marcus screamed. Pain beyond description shot through his nervous system as ice crystals formed in his bloodstream. His hand went completely numb within seconds, then began turning blue-white as circulation stopped. But the data core between their palms began to glow, initiating the transfer sequence. "Hold on," Queen Vexthara commanded, her own voice strained. The transfer process required perfect stillness from both participants. Any movement would corrupt the delicate information stream. Marcus bit down hard, tasting blood as his body convulsed from shock. He could feel his heart rate dropping dangerously low, but forced himself to maintain contact. Through his fading vision, he watched the data core's light patterns shift and dance as 18,000 files of star charts, mineral surveys, and hegemony fleet positions flowed into Queen Vexthara's consciousness. "The hegemony has 67 ships in attack formation," she whispered, reading the incoming data. "They plan to claim all 17 worlds simultaneously." Marcus nodded weakly, fighting to stay conscious. His arm was completely frozen now, ice crystals visible beneath his skin, but the transfer was only halfway complete. "Why?" Queen Vexthara asked suddenly. her eyes meeting his as information continued to flow between them. Why risk your life for people who aren't even your own species? Marcus struggled to focus through the pain and hypothermia. Because, he gasped, in 50 years, when our children ask what we did during the hegemony expansion, I want to say we chose cooperation over conquest. Something shifted in the Queen's expression. Surprise, perhaps even respect. She had expected political calculation or military strategy, not idealism. Your species fascinates me, she admitted, maintaining deadly contact despite knowing it was killing him. Most beings seek only their own survival. Humans learned long ago, Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible, that individual survival means nothing if civilization falls apart around you. The data core's light began to fade as the transfer neared completion. Marcus felt his consciousness slipping, but held on through sheer willpower. The final files contained classified information about hegemony weaknesses, tactical data that could turn the tide of any conflict. Queen Vexthara watched his vital signs failing and made a decision that would change both their worlds forever. The transfer completed just as Marcus collapsed, his frozen hand finally releasing Queen Vexthara's deadly grasp. She stared down at the human's unconscious form, ice crystals covering his entire arm and spreading across his chest. Medical scanners would confirm what everyone already knew. No one survived her touch for that long. But as she knelt beside him, Queen Vexthara noticed something impossible. Marcus was still breathing, his chest rising and falling in shallow but steady rhythm. His skin remained blue-white from extreme cold, but his heart continued beating against all physiological logic. "Impossible!" Lord Kethmore breathed, approaching cautiously. "He should be dead twice over!" Queen Vexthara placed her palm against Marcus's forehead, monitoring his condition through direct contact. What she discovered defied everything her species understood about biology. "His cellular structure is adapting," she whispered in amazement. "The cold damage isn't spreading. It's stabilizing." The revelation sent shockwaves through her assembled court. No species had ever demonstrated immunity to Zeridian cold, let alone developed resistance through exposure. "Summon the medical team," she ordered, "and prepare the strategic war room. We have 17 worlds to protect and 6 hours to do it." As palace medics rushed to stabilize Marcus, Queen Vexthara absorbed the implications of what she had witnessed. The star charts revealed trilithium deposits worth more than entire planetary economies. The tactical data exposed hegemony fleet movements and weapon specifications. Most importantly, the cultural exchange proved that humans possessed something her warrior empire had never encountered. The willingness to sacrifice everything for abstract principles like cooperation and mutual survival. "Your Majesty," Marcus whispered weakly as medical equipment surrounded him. "Did the transfer complete successfully?" Queen Vexthara nodded, studying his face with new understanding. "Every file transferred perfectly, but you nearly died in the process." "Nearly isn't the same as actually," Marcus replied with a weak smile. "And now we both know the hegemony's plans." She helped him sit up, noting that his previously frozen arm was regaining normal color and feeling. The impossible recovery continued defying her species' scientific understanding. "How?" she asked simply. Marcus flexed his restored fingers experimentally. Humans adapt quickly under extreme stress. Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and wars by developing resistance to whatever threatened them most. Maybe your touch triggered some kind of evolutionary response. The medical team confirmed his theory with scans showing accelerated cellular regeneration and modified protein structures in his bloodstream. Marcus had become the first non-Zeridian capable of surviving prolonged contact with their queen, a development that would reshape diplomatic relationships across 3-star systems. "The hegemony fleet will arrive soon," Queen Vexthara said, rising from beside his medical table. "We need immediate military coordination." Marcus nodded and attempted to stand, surprised to find his strength rapidly returning. "Earth's fleet is already en route to the first contested world. Admiral Chen, my sister, commands our fastest ships." "Your sister?" Queen Vexthara raised one elegant eyebrow. "Are all human families this dedicated to interstellar diplomacy? Our father taught us that small gestures can change entire civilizations," Marcus explained. "Accepting help from medical staff, He would have been proud to see humans and Zeridians working together. Queen Vexthera activated the throne room's communication systems, broadcasting to her fleet commanders across the Empire. Within minutes, holographic displays showed dozens of Zeridian warships changing course toward the 17 contested worlds. Joint human-Zeridian patrol fleets will establish defensive positions at each Trilithium system, she announced to her war council. Any hegemony ship attempting to claim these worlds will face immediate resistance. Lord Kethmore approached with concern evident in his scaled features. Your Majesty, committing our forces to defend human discoveries could be seen as weakness by other species. Queen Vexthera turned to face her noble council, her voice carrying absolute authority. It will be seen as strength. The hegemony expands through fear and isolation, convincing each species that they stand alone. Today, we prove that cooperation defeats conquest. Marcus watched the strategic displays showing fleet movements and felt profound hope. The star charts he had risked his life to deliver were already changing the balance of power, but more importantly, they were creating the foundation for a genuine alliance between species. There's something else, he said, drawing the Queen's attention. The archaeological team that found these charts, they're still on Azure Prime, the planet where we discovered the progenitor vault. If the hegemony takes that world, they'll capture the entire human research team. Queen Vexthara studied tactical maps showing hegemony ship positions. Azure Prime lay directly in their attack route, and its minimal defensive capabilities made it an easy target. How many people? She asked. 43 researchers and their families, Marcus replied, including children. The throne room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Civilian evacuation normally took days of careful planning, but hegemony forces would reach Azure Prime within hours. Then we evacuate them now, Queen Vexthara declared, surprising her entire court. Lord Kethmore, dispatch our fastest rescue ships to Azure Prime immediately. Your Majesty, the noble protested. Risking Zeridian lives to save human civilians sends a dangerous precedent. Queen Vexthara's luminescent eyes fixed on him with arctic intensity. Lord Kethmore, this human just risked his life to share vital intelligence with us, despite knowing it could kill him. If we cannot match his courage by protecting his people, then we deserve whatever fate the hegemony delivers. Her words carried the weight of absolute command, and Lord Kethmore bowed in submission. Within minutes, emergency evacuation ships launched from 3 different Zeridian military bases, racing toward Azure Prime at maximum speed. Marcus felt overwhelming gratitude as he watched the rescue operation unfold on tactical displays. Queen Vexthara had committed significant military resources to save human lives, demonstrating a level of interspecies cooperation that historians would remember for generations. Thank you, he said simply. Queen Vexthara turned from the command displays to meet his eyes. Thank me when everyone reaches safety. The war room's main screen activated, showing Admiral Sarah Chen's face as her transmission reached the Zeridian palace. The family resemblance between the siblings was immediately apparent, though Sarah's expression carried military hardness earned through years of deep space combat. Captain Chen, Admiral Chen said formally, relief evident in her voice. I'm glad to see you survived the diplomatic mission, more than survived. Queen Vexthara has agreed to joint military operations against the hegemony expansion. Admiral Chen's expression shifted to surprise, then professional respect as she addressed the Queen directly. Your Majesty, Earth Fleet Command is honored to coordinate with Zeridian forces. Our ships are fast, but your weapons technology is superior. Together, we can protect all 17 contested worlds. Queen Vexthara nodded approvingly. Admiral, your brother has demonstrated remarkable courage in securing this alliance. The tactical data he provided reveals hegemony weaknesses we can exploit. That sounds like Marcus, Admiral Chen said with a slight smile. Always willing to take impossible risks for the greater good. The tactical collaboration proceeded with efficient professionalism as human and Zeridian commanders coordinated their forces. Fleet positions, weapon specifications, and communication protocols were shared freely between species that had been strangers mere hours earlier. Marcus watched the impossible become routine as ancient enemies transformed into allies through mutual necessity. The hegemony threat had created an opportunity for cooperation that might never have existed during peacetime. "Incoming priority transmission," announced a Zeridian communications officer. "Hegemony Command is broadcasting surrender demands to all contested worlds." The main display showed Fleet Admiral Torvin, the Hegemony's most feared commander. His reptilian features radiated cold calculation as he delivered his ultimatum. "Inhabitants of the Outer Rim territories, you have 3 hours to evacuate the 17 designated worlds. These systems now fall under hegemony protection. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Queen Vexthara's expression hardened to match her lethal nature. "Open a return channel. All frequencies." When the communication links activated, she stepped forward to address not only Admiral Torvin but every ship in the Hegemony fleet. "Fleet Admiral Torvin, this is Queen Vexthara of the Zeridian Empire. The 17 worlds you claim are under joint human-Zeridian protection. Your surrender demands are rejected. Withdraw your forces immediately, or face the consequences of challenging our united fleets." Torvin's scaled features showed surprise, then anger. "Your Majesty, the Zeridian Empire has no treaties with the human colonies. This intervention violates interstellar law." "Interstellar law," Queen Vexthara replied coldly, "does not grant you the right to claim inhabited worlds through military intimidation. Our alliance with Earth is effective immediately." The transmission ended with both sides understanding that negotiation had failed. War was now inevitable. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility as he realized his mission had succeeded beyond all expectations. By risking everything to share vital intelligence, he had created an alliance that could reshape the balance of power across multiple star systems. But success would be measured in the coming battle, where human determination and Zeridian strength would face their ultimate test against overwhelming hegemony numbers. The tactical displays showed enemy and allied fleet positions converging on the contested worlds, setting the stage for the largest interstellar battle in recent history. Everything now depended on whether cooperation could triumph over conquest in the cold depths of space. Hegemony Fleet Admiral Torvin studied his tactical displays with growing concern. Intelligence reports had described human and Zeridian forces as separate, manageable threats. Now his sensors detected joint task forces moving with coordinated precision toward every contested world, a level of cooperation that shouldn't have been possible between species that had never fought together. "Combat analysis," he ordered his tactical officer. 67 hegemony ships against 43 human vessels and 38 Zeridian warships, came the response. "We maintain numerical superiority, but their combined technologies present unknown variables." Torvin's reptilian eyes narrowed as he watched human ships with their speed and maneuverability forming protective screens around Zeridian vessels bristling with devastating weapons. The tactical formation suggested extensive battle planning despite the alliance being mere hours old. "Target the weakest world first," he decided. "Azure Prime, minimal defenses, civilian population. We take it quickly and force them to divide their forces protecting non-combatants." On Azure Prime's surface, Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her archaeological equipment as emergency sirens filled the air. The progenitor vault site that had yielded such incredible discoveries was about to become a battleground. "Evacuation ships incoming," announced her assistant. "Zeridian rescue vessels arriving in 2 minutes." Elena felt amazement break through her fear. Aliens risking their lives to save human researchers represented a diplomatic revolution that would change everything about interstellar relationships. "Pack only essential data cores," she ordered her team. "Leave everything else." The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency as Zeridian ships landed at the research site. Elena watched in wonder as crystalline humanoids emerged to assist with the rescue, their movements graceful despite the obvious danger. "Quickly," urged the Zeridian flight commander. "Hegemony ships are approaching the system." 43 researchers and family members boarded alien vessels, trusting their lives to beings they had never met. Children stared in fascination at their rescuers while parents calculated how many assumptions about the universe had just been proven wrong. The evacuation completed moments before Hegemony Forward scouts entered Azure Prime's outer atmosphere. Admiral Torvin's forces found an empty planet with abandoned research equipment, but no hostages to leverage against the Allied fleets. In the Zeridian Palace war room, Queen Vexthara monitored the rescue mission with satisfaction. Every human civilian had reached safety, but now the real battle would begin. Hegemony forces are spreading across all 17 worlds simultaneously, reported Lord Kethmore. They're trying to claim everything at once rather than focusing on individual victories. Marcus studied the tactical displays, noting how Torvin's strategy revealed both strength and weakness. They're gambling that we can't defend 17 different locations effectively. Then we'll prove them wrong, Queen Vexthara declared. Admiral Chen, deploy your fastest ships to establish communication relays between all contested systems. My warships will provide heavy firepower support wherever the hegemony concentrates their attack. The coordination between species continued to astound military observers on both sides. Human and Zeridian commanders shared information freely, adapted to each other's fighting styles, and covered each other's weaknesses with remarkable efficiency. The first engagement occurred at Omega Station, where a hegemony destroyer encountered a joint patrol consisting of 2 human frigates and 1 Zeridian heavy cruiser. The enemy ship opened fire expecting easy prey, but discovered that human speed and Zeridian shields created a devastating combination. Admiral Torvin watched the tactical feat in disbelief as his destroyer was outmaneuvered and disabled within minutes. The human ships had drawn fire while the Zeridian vessel positioned itself for a perfect weapons lock, demonstrating combat coordination that typically required months of training. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir." All data suggested minimal cooperation between these species. Torvin realized that his intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. The alliance wasn't political convenience. It represented genuine military partnership that multiplied both forces' effectiveness. Battle reports flooded in from across the contested systems as hegemony forces encountered unexpected resistance. Human ships with their advanced sensors guided Zeridian weapons to vulnerable targets. Zeridian defensive fields protected human vessels during high-speed attack runs. The combined tactics proved more effective than the sum of their individual capabilities. But Admiral Torvin commanded superior numbers, and he began concentrating his forces for overwhelming assaults on key worlds. If he could break the Alliance's defensive line at even one location, the psychological victory might shatter their cooperation. All available ships to converge on Kepler. 442B, he ordered. 40 vessels against whatever they can deploy. We'll crush their alliance through superior firepower. Queen Vexthara received the intelligence update with grim determination. Torvin was massing nearly 2/3 of his fleet for a decisive assault on the most valuable Trilithium world. "He's betting everything on one massive attack," she told Marcus and her war council. "If we lose Kepler, 442B, we lose access to the largest Trilithium deposits." Marcus studied fleet positions and made a recommendation that surprised everyone present. "Then we don't fight him there." "Explain," Queen Vexthara commanded. "Torvin expects a defensive battle, where his numbers matter most," Marcus replied. "Instead, we evacuate Kepler 442B and use his concentration against him. While he's committing 40 ships to capture an empty world, we strike his supply lines and reinforcement bases." The strategy required abandoning the most valuable prize to gain tactical advantage, a counterintuitive approach that challenged traditional military thinking. But Queen Vexthara recognized its elegance. "A classic human strategy," she observed with approval. "Trade terrain for opportunity," Lord Kethmore protested immediately. "Your Majesty, abandoning our strongest position sends a message of weakness." "It sends a message of intelligence," Queen Vexthara corrected. "Admiral Chen, can your forces disable hegemony supply stations while they're focused on Kepler 502b? "Absolutely," Admiral Chen replied from her command ship. "Human ships excel at deep strike missions. Give us target coordinates and we'll cut their logistical support." The audacious plan took shape rapidly as human and Zeridian forces repositioned for simultaneous attacks on hegemony infrastructure. Rather than defending static positions, the Alliance would strike at the enemy's ability to sustain prolonged combat. Admiral Torvin arrived at Kepler 442b with overwhelming force, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, his sensors detected a completely evacuated world with no defending ships. "Where are they?" he demanded, suspicion replacing confidence. His answer came 30 minutes later when emergency transmissions flooded in from hegemony bases across 3 sectors. Human strike forces had simultaneously attacked fuel depots, ammunition stockpiles, and communication relays, while Zeridian heavy cruisers destroyed repair facilities and reinforcement staging areas. "Sir," reported his tactical officer with growing alarm, "we've lost 70% of our logistical support network." Torvin realized his mistake with dawning horror. By concentrating his forces for one decisive battle, he had left his infrastructure defenseless. His massive fleet now faced the prospect of fighting without adequate supplies or reinforcements. "Withdraw to defensive positions," he ordered reluctantly. "Protect our remaining bases." But the Alliance had gained irreversible momentum. Human and Zeridian forces pressed their advantage, systematically dismantling hegemony positions while avoiding direct confrontation with superior numbers. The tactical revolution continued as species cooperation defeated individual strength through coordination and shared strategy. Marcus watched the battle unfold from the Zeridian command center, amazed at how his desperate diplomatic mission had created such profound change. The alliance forged through necessity was proving stronger than either species had achieved alone. Queen Vexthara stood beside him, monitoring fleet movements with satisfaction. "Your gamble succeeded beyond all expectations." "Our gamble," Marcus corrected. "You chose to trust a stranger touching you could cost your life." She looked at him with something approaching warmth despite her lethal nature. "Perhaps trust is the most powerful weapon any species can wield." As hegemony resistance collapsed across the contested worlds, both leaders understood that their cooperation had created something unprecedented, a genuine alliance based on mutual respect rather than military necessity. The foundation for lasting peace among the stars had been built through courage, sacrifice, and the simple recognition that survival required cooperation. The battle for 17 worlds was ending in victory, but the greatest triumph was the proof that different species could choose partnership over conquest when faced with impossible challenges. Admiral Torvin's communication came through on emergency frequencies broadcast across all contested systems with the weight of inevitable defeat. "Allied forces, this is Fleet Admiral Torvin of the Hegemony. I am authorized to discuss terms for withdrawal from the disputed territories." Queen Vexthara and Admiral Chin exchanged glances across the communication link, both recognizing the historic significance of the moment. The Hegemony had never retreated from a territorial claim without catastrophic losses, yet their combined forces had achieved victory through coordination rather than superior firepower. "Admiral Torvin," Queen Vexthara replied with measured dignity. "We accept your request for negotiations. Prepare to transfer command authorization for all 17 worlds to joint human Zeridian administration." The formal surrender proceeded with military precision. Hegemony forces withdrew from contested space while Alliance vessels secured the trolithium deposits that would fund both civilizations' growth for centuries. Medical ships arrived to evacuate wounded from all sides, demonstrating the humanitarian principles that had motivated the Alliance from its inception. Marcus stood in the palace observatory, watching through crystal windows as the last hegemony ships departed. The rapid transition from potential war to diplomatic resolution still amazed him, particularly given how close they had come to catastrophic failure. "Regrets?" Queen Vexthara asked, approaching silently despite her imposing stature. "None," Marcus replied honestly, "though I admit surprise at how completely everything changed in so few hours." "Change often happens faster than anyone expects," she observed, studying the star patterns beyond the windows. "The question is whether we can sustain what we've built." Her concern was justified. Military alliances forged during crisis often dissolved when immediate threats ended. Human and Zeridian cultures had significant differences that could create future conflicts despite their current cooperation. The archaeological team from Azure Prime wants to establish a permanent research station, Marcus mentioned. Dr. Vasquez believes there are dozens more progenitor sites in contested space. Her findings could benefit both our species. Queen Vexthara nodded approvingly. Joint research projects create lasting connections between civilizations. Lord Kethmore has proposed cultural exchange programs as well. Zeridian scholars studying human history, human scientists working with our crystalline technologies. The conversation was interrupted by Admiral Chen's transmission from her flagship now orbiting the most valuable Trilithium world. "Both of you should see this," she said, her voice carrying excitement rather than military formality. "Dr. Vasquez made another discovery in the progenitor data cores. You're not going to believe what she found." The holographic display activated, showing Dr. Vasquez in her temporary laboratory aboard the Zeridian research vessel. Her expression combined scientific wonder with profound implications. "The progenitor records describe a network of ancient civilizations that spanned multiple galaxies," she explained, manipulating three-dimensional star maps. But more importantly, they detail the fall of that network. It collapsed when species stopped cooperating and began competing for resources. Marcus felt the historical weight of her discovery. The progenitors had faced the same choice now confronting modern civilizations: cooperation or extinction. "Their records include detailed warnings," Dr. Vasquez continued. "They specifically identify the mistake that destroyed their alliance, believing that individual species' strength mattered more than collective survival." Queen Vexthara absorbed the implications with growing understanding. "They're giving us their failure as guidance for our success." "More than guidance," Dr. Vasquez replied. "They left technological blueprints for cooperative ventures, energy systems that require multiple species to operate, transportation networks designed for shared access, communication technologies that break down barriers between different forms of consciousness." The revelation transformed their alliance from temporary convenience into potential civilization-changing partnership. The progenitors had left them the tools for sustained cooperation, but only if they chose to use them. "There's something else," Marcus said, studying the technical specifications. "These technologies can be weaponized. They only function through genuine cooperation between species. Anyone trying to use them for conquest or dominance would find them useless." The elegant safeguards indicated that the progenitors had learned from their mistakes. Their legacy technologies could create abundance for cooperating species while remaining worthless to conquerors or isolationists. Queen Vexthara made a decision that would echo across time. "Dr. King, Vasquez, I formally invite Earth's scientific community to establish permanent research facilities in Zeridian space. We will share these discoveries equally and develop their applications together." Admiral Chen smiled broadly at the proposal. "Earth Council will accept immediately." The prospect of joint technological development represents exactly the kind of partnership our species needs. As formal agreements took shape, Marcus reflected on how dramatically circumstances had changed. His desperate diplomatic mission had evolved into the foundation for unprecedented interstellar cooperation. The risks he had taken in Queen Vexthara's throne room seemed insignificant compared to the civilization-altering discoveries they had enabled. "The hegemony withdrawal creates opportunities for other species as well," Queen Vexthara noted. "The Centauri Republic, the Andromedan Collective, smaller independent worlds, they all need to know that cooperation offers better alternatives than conquest." Marcus nodded, understanding her vision. A true alliance not just between humans and Zeridians, but spanning multiple species committed to mutual benefit rather than individual dominance. "The progenitor network reborn," Dr. Vasquez added from her transmission, "but with the wisdom to avoid their predecessors' mistakes." The conversation continued deep into the cycle, planning joint missions to locate additional progenitor sites, establishing cultural exchange programs, and designing cooperative technologies that would benefit all participating species. What had begun as emergency cooperation was becoming the architecture for a new kind of civilization. Lord Kethmore entered the observatory with news that confirmed their success. "Your Majesty, 17 different species have requested information about joining our alliance. Word of the hegemony defeat has spread throughout contested space." Queen Vexthara looked at Marcus with satisfaction. "Your courage in my throne room has created ripples across the galaxy." "Our courage," Marcus corrected again, "and Dr. Vasquez's discoveries, Admiral Chen's tactics, Your willingness to trust an unknown species, every choice mattered. As the orbital cycles turned and formal treaties replaced emergency cooperation, the Human-Zeridian Alliance became the foundation for something unprecedented, a voluntary confederation of species, committed to shared growth rather than competitive expansion. The progenitor technologies provided abundance that eliminated resource-based conflicts. Cultural exchange programs created understanding that reduced fear-based hostility. Joint exploration missions discovered new worlds where multiple species could settle peacefully. Years later, historians would mark Marcus Chen's approach to Queen Vexthara's throne as the moment when galactic civilization chose cooperation over conquest. But for those present during those crucial hours, it felt less like destiny than like ordinary people making the choice to trust each other. Despite impossible odds, the alliance grew stronger with each passing cycle, proving that genuine partnership between species could accomplish what individual strength never could. The galaxy had found a new model for civilization, one based on shared courage rather than inherited fear. Standing together in the Crystal Observatory, human and Zeridian leaders watched ships from dozens of species traveling freely between worlds that had once been contested territories. The impossible had become routine, a universe where different species chose cooperation as their path to the stars. The touch that should have meant death had instead created life for entire civilizations. And in the end, that transformation proved more powerful than any weapon ever forged in the cold depths of space.